I happen to have been one of those people who for a while clung on to my old phone. It was an LG. I would have kept that phone forever. It was so easy to use. You couldn't destroy it. I could see the buttons. It wasn't fancy, but I loved it. So what does that say about me?
Well, it says that you're one who likes simplicity, functionality, and maybe frugality. You probably saved some money that way.
I probably did, but I did eventually buy the iPhone, so I'm not that frugal. You've been talking to some of these folks who have been clinging on to their old models. They all have different reasons. What are they saying?
Some of them really do just want to save money. Others resent either the contracts that carriers want to lock them into or the marketing campaigns, the pressure to constantly upgrade your phone to be cool and hip. Still others have a style that suits them. One young woman had a Samsung Juke that switched open like a switchblade. She thought that suited her style. She loved the colors. And still others just don't want to be distracted by a smartphone.
We're looking at some of these obsolete phones right now, and one of them looked like, I think, the phone Gordon Gekko used in the first Wall Street movie. I mean, we look back in movies and we see these and we sort of just think, oh my gosh, I can't even believe like we used to carry something like that. But at one point in time, that was the new thing. Now, do these folks, when they go out with these phones, do people make fun of them?
Absolutely, and most of the people I interviewed had a joke ready in response. Sometimes they pulled it out and made fun of it themselves to preempt any of the jokes, saying, hey, I've got a new app on my cell phone, it's a calculator, just making fun of it.
Now, what about the waste of cell phones? I mean, how much waste are we talking about when these old models get dumped into the landfill? I mean, hopefully they get recycled, but what are we looking at?
Well, that's one reason that a lot of people resist the turnover and the churn in these products. There's a lot of waste, a lot of publicity about the toxic and bad working conditions in recycling facilities overseas. We do have places like Recellular and Gazelle now that are buying, recycling, and remarketing these phones. So the problem is resolved to some extent, but that is one reason some people do hang on to their phones. They don't like the environmental impact.
And some people hang on to them just because they sort of think they're very cool and as well as being functional. I mean, I remember the Nokia phone, the little tiny candy-colored ones that the actors in Charlie's Angels all carried. Those were very hot for a while. I actually still have mine, I think, just because I think it's iconic of that time period. Do you find that people are, even if they're not necessarily using the old models, Sue, that they're just collecting them because it speaks to, you know, one part of an era?
Absolutely. People love, for example, their Motorola Razr from the 2004, 2006 era. And some people buy those used and keep extra ones in the drawer so that they can always have a Razr, that slim phone that was so hip for a while. Motorola actually has now come out with a new version, a smartphone version of that same Razr.
I wonder how many people talk to you, though, about the longevity of phones. I mean, this is just completely anecdotal, but I certainly felt that some of the older phones I had just simply lasted longer. I mean, I would have them for 3, 4, 5 years. When you talk to folks, did you find that was one reason they held onto these old phones, is they just simply lasted longer, they worked better?
In some cases, that's true. I think there hasn't been that much change in longevity in the last decade or so. There was a stubborn resistance, though, to giving in to manufacturers who don't sell replacement parts. One guy whose dog chewed up his old phone just put a Scotch tape over the back because he couldn't find a new cover for it. He was so disgusted with that whole approach, he rebelled against it.
He rebelled against it. I have to ask, Sue, what kind of phone do you carry?
I now have an iPhone 3. It used to be one of those Samsung flip phone carriers, but my teenage kids were the ones who pushed me over into the new phones.